Welcome to Illicit Liaisons, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the naughty of romance fiction. I'm Jenna Hart, your host, and I'm also a romance author, as well as the owner of swoonworthyhea.com, an online community for diehard, hopeless romantics like me to come and talk about romance fiction. We've got all sorts of groups there that you can come and talk with other readers who love romance fiction as well. You can start your own book blog. If you're an author, you can come over and start your own author blog. We have monthly contests and, of course, the Illicit Liaisons podcast. So I hope that you will stop by. If you love romance and you're looking for a place where you can let loose and talk with other people who also love romance fiction, swoonworthyhea.com is the place to be. So it's bad enough that 2020 has been a horror of a year, but now it's almost Halloween, which should be a fun horror, but of course we're all having to continue to stay home, quarantine, no trick-or-treating, no Halloween parties, and the only real fun there is reading paranormal romance fiction. Now, I'm going to be honest, I am not as well versed in paranormal romance fiction, which is not to say I don't read it. I've read plenty of romances with books and vampires and all that kind of stuff, but I also know that there are people out there that are avid readers of paranormal fiction who know way more about it than I do. So I went on a quest looking for some of these avid readers to come and talk with me about their love of paranormal romance and all aspects of paranormal romance. And I was able to find two really fun ladies, Chloe and Sionna, who not only read a lot of romance fiction and actually have some recommendations for you, especially if you're not well-versed in paranormal. They actually have some great ideas on where to start if you're new in paranormal romance reading, but they're also authors in their own right. So I'm really, really excited to be able to share this really fun conversation that we had. Before we get to that, I did want to give a quick message about Write a Romance in 30 Days challenge that I am running this November 2020. I know it's NaNoWriMo. If you're doing NaNoWriMo, excellent. I love doing NaNoWriMo. I am also doing NaNoWriMo. But if your goal is to write a romance during NaNoWriMo, I encourage you to take the Write a Romance in 30-Day challenge. It would be something just to support you along your way in doing NaNoWriMo. Now, the actual challenge does start on November 1st, but the last week of October, I am going to email everybody who signs up for the challenge a planner so that they can get ready, get set, and be able to go on November 1st. So if you are interested in that, it is free. Just go to writewithheart.com, and that is heart as in HARTE, my name. It's a play on my name. So writewithheart.com, and you can sign up for the challenge there. And again, the last week of October, you will get a planner to help you get ready so that on November 1st, you can start writing. Every day in November, you'll get an email that will have some tips and ideas and inspiration. And basically, my goal is not only to be alongside you as you make this effort to write a novel in 30 days, but having ghost written for 2 clients over the last few years, I've learned a few tricks on how to write a lot in as little time possible. So I'm going to share with you some of the tricks and hacks that I use to write more in less time. If that sounds intriguing, I hope again that you will go to writewithheart.com. That's write as in writing, with heart, HARTE.com. Sign up. It's free. And I'm just really excited about this challenge. I hope that you'll check it out. So now that I have that all the way, let's go ahead and get started with this really fun conversation I had with Chloe and Sionna.
Well, my name's Sionna Trenz. I'm a newly published author as of this past August, and my genre is paranormal romance. I've got one series so far that I'm working on, and I'm just having so much fun writing it and exploring this world I've created.
You know, I have to say, you sent me your bio and you told me your age, and you don't sound um not that that age is old, because I'm way older than that,
It's
but you
okay, you're
sound
allowed to
quite
say
you
it. I'm
sound quite
41.
young.
Yeah, I've always sounded young. And so I was really nervous about this podcast because it's my first one. And I always come across sounding like a kid.
I think you sound great.
Well, thank you.
Chloe, why don't you tell us about you?
I am Chloe Alice Balkin, and I am also a paranormal romance author. I am the author of the Third Shift series, as well as the Candy for Demons series. And then I've got some contemporary weird science, erotic romance, and I've got some erotic fairy tales floating around out there.
Let's start out with talking about kind of what is your fascination with the paranormal. And I know, Sionna, you had said you liked it all.
Yes.
But like, I'm not like that. So I'm curious to know, what is your fascination, and are there certain types of paranormal you like better than others? And Sionna, why don't you go ahead and start with that one?
Well, honestly, me liking just magic and all of the creepy whatever started when I was a kid. I used to read scary stories to tell in the dark, all of that. And my favorite series when I was in late elementary, early middle school was actually Susan Cooper's The Dark is Rising series, which is probably my first truly like paranormal type series. And it's all about magic and the King Arthur myths and things like that. And it kind of grew from that. And I just love the idea of that we don't necessarily know everything that's out there in the universe, that we don't know even everything that's out there in our world, that people that you walk by on the street could be hiding some secret and able to shift into an animal or read your mind or something like that. So it's for me, I think it's the exploration that so many authors in the genre do, as far as how these different ideas can take shape over different species.
That's interesting. I'm going to be looking at people I pass on the street very differently.
Well, if you've ever watched Doctor Who, the Don't Blink episode will never have you looking at statues the same way again. I will tell you that.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That's hilarious. You know what? Your comment kind of made me think of, and this isn't romance, but it is the Suki Stackhouse Mysteries by Charlene Harris.
Yes.
And, that book eventually, her series eventually had everything, right? So it wasn't just, it started with vampires, and pretty soon we had werewolves and werepanthers and fairies and witches. And it was like everything really did exist. So that was funny. So Chloe, what has been your fascination?
So I kind of have that same upbringing. Definitely the scary stories to tell in the dark. Always love them to this day. And when I was in high school, it would have been the days of Christopher Pike and L.J. Smith, who did Vampire Diaries and Secret Circle. Um, and I read all those, but also like I was very much into Anne Rice. And it's funny because I think because of that, I don't really do vampires anymore, because I'm used to vampires being a very different beast than they are in the more modern paranormal romance. But for me, I like reading and writing them because psychology is kind of my jam. And I really like that you can take these characters and put them into very much larger than life scenarios and put them in, these life or death situations that are constantly happening and constantly like making sense within it, where you don't have to have like, I'm, oh God, I can't remember his name. Jack Ryan, is that the action hero guy? Like, you don't have to have that kind of scenario. This just can be their lives and have all of these scenarios. And like you mentioned, the fated mates trope, like you can play with all of these things that don't really fit into what we are, but kind of are, it's the fantasy fulfillment of it, that we could be in these situations, we could just have like one true match, we could have all of these things in this other world.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a big fan of the second chance romance, and
Mhm.
it is again that sort of destined love, you know. Um, so well, let's talk a little bit about really what defines a paranormal romance, because it seems obvious, goes vampire shapeshifters, but for example, some people will put Outlander in paranormal, and I guess there's time travel, but once she's there, except for there aren't really witches, even though she's about to be burned as a witch. So would that be considered? Because in my mind, that's more sort of fantasy. Does fantasy and I don't know. Tell me what you think defines, or what does define a paranormal romance. Chloe, why don't you go ahead?
So that is absolutely a difficult term to define, and I'm sure that Sionna and I are going to have different answers here. For me, it's something where it takes place in our world, whether it is a contemporary world or a historical world, but has some sort of a magic to it. So I don't count anything that's weird science. I don't count anything that's like alien romance or like, yeah, like weird science. I guess I don't need to define that any further, but like I absolutely put time travel into it because something has happened that is outside of the real realm, but they are remaining in the real realm. So yeah, any of the standard ones, anything with witches, I count in that. Anything, this is something that came up in one of my groups recently about superheroes, and I consider like anybody like X-Men to be paranormal as well, if they're like that concept of a group, but in a romance situation.
Now,
So
Superman is an alien, so
Superman is an alien. X-Men, though, they
he
are just
doesn't count. Huh?
they're just they're not a different race, but they're modified human beings.
Right, right. Huh. And what about you, Siona?
Actually, Jenna and Chloe and I are sorry, are pretty close on the definition. Paranormal is literally just means beyond the normal. So if you take our world and add something that is beyond that to it, then you automatically have paranormal, something that can't be explained by science. As far as time travel, there is actually almost a subgenre of the paranormal sci-fi romance that's specifically called time travel romance. And that pretty much encompasses all types of time travel. For myself personally, if the time travel occurs because of something magical, like I want to say it was a book by Karen Moaning, um, Beyond a Highland Mist or something like that. And it's a fairy cursed a woman and had her travel back in time. That I consider paranormal. But if some kind of science is used, like H.G. Wells' Time Machine, obviously that would not be paranormal. So that's pretty much my take on the whole genre.
Actually, that was actually in my head. That was a question. Like, what if it's a machine, an invention? So you answered that one. So that and that's sort of how I was thinking of it too. Anything kind of witches, vampires, shapeshifters, ghosts, all those kinds of things. Would be paranormal. The thing that is coming up for me now is a lot of times I read these books, and well, like the Black Dagger series, they're pretty dark and gritty. And it seems like when there's paranormal stuff, for the most part, ominous things are going on. There's a battle between good and evil and all that kind of stuff. But I'm wondering, are there any, and I do know there's an author that does have some light oriented paranormal. At least she has humor in it, even if there's sort of a suspense part to it. But I wonder, is there any paranormal romances out there that would read like a rom-com, but he just happens to be a vampire or a werewolf or something like that? So it's just part of it, who he is, but there isn't necessarily this world battle. I wonder if anybody would like that even. But in my mind, I was thinking like Bewitched. I'm thinking like Bewitched, right?
I'm I was thinking about that when I saw your question. It took me a while to try to figure it out. And to me, the difference between like Bewitched and I think you mentioned Buffy the Vampire Slayer in your email, is that Bewitched is a half-hour sitcom. Buffy is, a longer drama. And I feel like I've read paranormal romance short stories or novellas that tend to be much lighter, and they're kind of goofy, funny, just quick fun reads, whereas most novels, they need some kind of central issue that the whole plot swirls around. So you can have funny parts, you can have light parts. In fact, I think they're absolutely necessary, especially if you're writing a dark issue, that you should have that just to give your readers a little bit of a break. But I haven't found too many full-length novels in the paranormal romance that are just goofy and funny like that.
What about you, Chloe? Have you?
So, absolutely, the length of it seems to dictate that to an extent. Some of it is also which subgenre of paranormal romance. I've noticed shifters are definitely a lot more humorous. If you look at Shelley Lawrenson or Lawrenston, it's one of those. Her stuff is fairly long and is hilarious. It's one of her series, the one that I read most recently, is three sisters who are part honey badgers and are just completely bonkers. The other one, so you get that with shifters. You also get a lot of slice of life with shifters. You get a lot of the like Western style. You get, where it's kind of people living very much like a Western romance, but with shifters. So not necessarily funny, some of them are, but it definitely doesn't have that life or death stakes going on with it. The other one that you see a lot of humor is demon romance. And I think it's that balance of like, I'm going to say this as somebody who writes humorous demon romance. It is that trying to balance out how you can make a hero out of somebody who is so cruel that he's a demon. So you really have to go to an extreme with it, and it becomes comedy basically. So a lot of demon romance, it's either really dark and gritty or it's rom-com.
Yeah. I was just sitting here thinking, like if you took something like Pride and Prejudice and, what if Darcy's issue is that he's a vampire? So you could have the same story, but maybe he comes off the way he is because he's a vampire, so I'm sort of thinking like, having these people in everyday life, they just happen to be, whatever.
Well, did you read the I don't know what you want to call it, almost ironic book, the satire called Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies?
I didn't. I probably should.
It's goofy. I will give it that. It is very goofy.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like I picked it up and would go through it and it would be like the exact book, except for then there would be the interjections of,
It's all of the same scenes except they add zombies. So like the dance scene gets interrupted by a zombie attack, that sort of thing.
So see,
well, look at
Go
what
ahead.
you've read already, Black Dagger Brotherhood. They
Yeah.
are very dark, but also you have a character like Butch who
Yeah.
is completely ridiculous. And
Yeah.
you've got like there's certainly those foil characters in it that there's a ton of humor. And then you have Rage in it, who he's kind of, just like the comic relief through the whole thing. So there is a lot of comedy, even in the darker paranormal romance.
Yeah. Well, and of
Mhm.
course, Butch and Vicious, the two of them, I mean, they're like old married people.
Yes.
And I remember she ended a book at one point where Vicious and Jane were, he was just walking, the book ends with him just walking out. And I remember tweeting like, wait, what's happening?
It was terrible. I know
And
what
then
you're
it's like,
talking about.
where, when's the next book? It was like another year. But he's someone that gets revisited a lot. And then with Butch, the two of them are funny. They're like old married people or something, the two of them. And I do like Rage as well. And one of the things that bothers me about the books now is we don't see enough of those. Like, I don't remember the last time I've seen Fury or
Yeah.
Zadist. you know um so I kind of miss the original core group.
You get the
But
trio.
you're right, there are some funny moments, and the women can be sort of hilarious as there's like, what is going on here? And for me, the best part of those books is the moment they see the woman, and it reminds me of Doug the dog in Up. Remember, it's like squirrel, and that's how they're like with the women. They're like, whoop,
Yeah.
that's mine.
Notoriously
So it's
in a
hilarious that
coma.
these guys are like 6'6", big beefy guy, and all of a sudden they're like, whoop, she's mine,
Yeah.
So I do find that hilarious. That is. Let me ask you this. What are some of your favorite authors or books in the paranormal romance genre?
So I've got two favorites. If we're going with traditionally published big names, Larissa Ione. And I hope I pronounce her last name correctly because I say it all the time. I constantly recommend her and I'm not sure. But she is the Demonica series. And that is, it's mostly demons, but they do go into werewolves and vampires and ghosts and all of that. It's a gigantic series. I recommend that. For the indie group, my favorite author, who all of her stuff is on Kindle Unlimited, is T.S. Joyce, and she is a shifter writer. She's got, oh god, she's got to have over like 50 books. The one that she's currently putting out is bull shifters who are working in a bull shifter writing circuit. So yeah, she writes very funny stuff.
Oh, that sounds good. What about you, Sienna?
My absolute favorite is Christine Feehan,
Yeah,
and
my
she's
sister
got
likes her.
yeah, she's got so many different series. Her dark series is about a race called Carpathians, so that would be your vampire series. I think she's up to 35 books in that one now. And then she's got one series that's finished. It's called the Drake Sisters series, and there's only 7 books in it. It's about 7 sisters, and they're kind of witches. She doesn't really come out and specifically say that, but each one has different abilities. So she's got multiple. She's got a shifter series. She just started 2 new ones. One is all of the characters are kind of psychic, and then the other one, it's called the Shadow Rider series, where they all can actually move through shadows, so they can slip in and slip out. It's really interesting. But so each series has its own type of abilities and its own issues. Some of them, especially her newer ones, are very dark. They deal with a lot of dark subjects on top of just being the paranormal too. So you do need to be careful if you've got triggers or anything like that. However, they're just so well written, and the descriptions that she uses of the places that they travel and things like that are absolutely phenomenal. I just, especially like when her stories take place in the Amazon, it's just the way she writes. I can't get enough of that.
Wow. I think I read one of the Carpathian ones. I can't really remember it except for it seems to me there's a scene where they're in a restaurant or something. Dang it. It's one of the early ones, I think, because I think my sister told me about it.
There's a couple of them where they're in restaurants and the Carpathians are kind of pretending to eat and making everybody around them seem like they are, but they can't actually eat on their own.
Yeah.
So,
and he drags her back to his castle or something or other. She ain't having it though.
I think you're talking about Dark Prince. That's the first one in the series. Yeah.
Okay.
That one. Actually, that wasn't the first one I read. The first one I read was from a short story from an anthology called Dark Dream. And that's what got me hooked. I think if I would have started with Dark Prince, I may not have gotten into it as much as I did, because that one, the Carpathians, especially the older ones, are very, very, very intense. And there's that clash with modern women, that they lived so many years ago and they're all about protection and women can't do this, that, or the other thing. And part of the books is how they grow to accept what their women can do and that their women have rights and things like that, which is part of why I like it. But it is dark at the very beginning.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Well, if someone were thinking, oh, maybe it's Halloween, I want to read a paranormal romance, is there something different than maybe these you have to recommend to somebody who might be new at it? Because some people, me for example, I do not gravitate towards shifter things because to me that just seems weird to me. I should try and read one though, because clearly, they're on your list here. But someone who maybe hadn't read it that, but likes other romances, are there some different ones that you might recommend to introduce people to?
Actually, yeah. I would honestly recommend, especially for somebody who's never read paranormal before, Nora Roberts. She's got a few different paranormal trilogies, but I would recommend starting out with her Key trilogy. I think it's Key of Light, Key of Knowledge, and I can't remember the last one. I read them so long ago, but it actually has to do with Celtic mythology and Celtic goddesses. So there's some magic in there. There's a little bit of drama, well, quite a bit of drama, a little bit of tension and things like that, suspense. But it's also light on the biting people's necks, shifting into animals, all of that stuff that you might not truly be interested in. And they are extremely funny as well.
Okay. I don't think I've read that one, but I've read others of hers, like the Sullivans, I think. No, is it the Sullivans? They're witches or something? I can't remember. What about you, Chloe?
It's fun. I just had to scroll through my Goodreads to find something because we've hit on the ones that I would recommend. The Highlander series that Sionna mentioned is like a good starting point. And yeah, anything Nora Roberts, because if you're already comfortable with Nora Roberts, it's a good way to ease in. Something I just found when I was looking through, though, it's a fairly new series. Or like there was also some things that I was like, this is not a good starting point. Let me start with. But the Heartland Shifters. If you are starting on, if you want to start with Shifters and you're looking for something light and not at all weird and kind of the people coming to terms with what they are, but like in a very loving situation, very friendly. The Heartland Shifters. It is by V. Vaughn. There is another author on it. I don't recall who the other author was, unfortunately.
Because they're sitting here talking about Nora Roberts, because she, again, has quite a few books. One of my all-time favorite books of hers is The Return of Rafe McCade.
Oh, I love that one.
I don't know how old you guys are, but it probably came out before you were born.
No, I grew up on Nora Roberts.
It was like a silhouette or Harlequin category romance, right? This is back in the beginning. There's just things about that book that stick. Like if I own it. I haven't gone back and read it again, but sometimes when I go back and look at the old books, I think, oh wait, why did I love that book? Because times change and everything. But right from a kid, I love. And of course, he had a ghost in his house, right?
Yes.
So, but that was just sort of incidental. The book that stands out to me that she wrote, and I want to say it's like Midnight Bayou or something.
Yes. She
In
did write that one.
Louisiana,
Yeah.
where it turns out there's like reincarnation, only it's like not what you expect. You get to the end and you're like,
Right.
wow.
Yeah, that
wasn't-
that was a very interesting book.
I don't want to
Yeah.
give it away because part of the fun is realizing, oh wait, and I think they made a movie of that too.
I think so. And I
Yeah,
think they also did Carolina Moon, which kind of touches on psychic abilities.
yeah. Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
That's
she does
right.
a lot of it. And again, it's
Mhm.
nice because it's very much a contemporary romance, but it has that just little bit in it
Yeah,
that, is just enough. Like the practical magic level of
Right.
right.
magic.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, and now that we're talking, there's a lot of books of hers that sort of have that, and I wonder if that goes back to her Irish roots because she clearly is very much into that because there's so many of her books were Ireland. Well, of course, the J.D. Robb books, I love those. They're not paranormal.
But they're in the
Uh,
future, a little bit in the future.
they are in the
Are
future.
they still in the future at this point?
I wonder if she imagined, like, wait a minute, we're only a couple years away from the start of the first book, right? And what is there, 50 books and we've only progressed like 2 years.
You're catching up fast.
But I love those books. That is the other one I always buy. Well, go ahead. What I'm curious about, because you're, obviously you're avid readers, this genre really well, but you also are writers. So I would be curious to know a little bit more about your own writing. I know you did a little bit in the introduction, and maybe tell us where people can find your stuff. And Chloe, do you want to go ahead and start?
Yes. Most of my stuff is on Amazon. It is all on Amazon. Most of it is Amazon exclusive, I guess is the right way of saying that. Most of my stuff is on Kindle Unlimited. Um, and I write, so I've got my Shifter series, and my Shifter series is the setup for that is that the world knows that they're shifters and they're not happy with their being shifters. So the government has kind of blocked them from being able to do anything. So it's a dystopian a little bit, and there's kind of like issues with oppression. It's a fairly serious series. And then my other big one is my Candy for Demons series, which is obviously the complete opposite of that. The first book in that is A Christmas Demon for Clara. I was going for the most bubble fluff possible in those. And that's just a series of three sisters who are human but have slightly abnormal abilities that puts them on the radar for the angels to get rid of them because they're abominations. So they end up getting saved by demons.
Okay, that sounds intriguing.
It does.
And what about you, Sionna?
Well, my book is currently available on Kindle Unlimited, and you can also get it on Barnes and Noble's website, beyond.com. So it is available in paperback as well. And the series is called Stargazer Island. The first book is Witch's Return. That's the only one that's out now. And it's Stargazer Island was originally created by my main character in Witch's Return's ancestor in order to basically save the world from an evil god. And her family line has, over the centuries, protected the island, and in so doing protected the world. And to do that, they actually draw in other species of paranormal creatures. So there's now shifters and hunters and fae and pretty much anything else you can imagine, all living together on this island, working together and fighting together. In Witch's Return, my main character, Sonia, actually was taken away by her mother when she was still a child, and she just finally is able to get back there. And that's kind of how everything progresses. But I really, one of the things that I love doing in my writing is exploring those interactions between different types of paranormal creatures, because many different authors will only focus on one or another, or if they have more than one, they won't combine them. So I wanted to see what their interactions would be like. Do they trust each other? Do they not? That sort of thing. And also, there's the issue of they live in the real world and they're not super secretive, but they do have to be a little bit careful because they figure, if the government finds out that this guy can shift into an animal, it's probably going to end up as a lab rat.
Right.
So it kind of plays with those themes of, walking a fine line and things like that. But there tends to be a lot of humor. I've kind of got a really corny sense of humor, so there's a lot of goofiness in there too.
Okay. It sounds kind of makes me think of Discovery of Witches, and they have
Yeah.
they don't like none of them like each other, but they have a council and they have rules, and it's one of those things where you think, gosh, the three of you are ostracized, well, first of all, the humans don't really know about them, but it's like you think they band together, but they only band together enough to make it in the human world, but they don't like each other. So that's what makes me think of that. I didn't ask, but I also noticed when it comes to young adult reading, I see a lot more, not necessarily vampires and things, but more like fantasy type things. So more fairies and I started reading a book. I haven't finished it yet. I can't remember her name. I should have pulled it out. Where like in the opening scene, a fairy who you think fairies, right? Tinkerbell, nice people. This is a fairy man, and he shows up and he slices a guy in half with his sword. The girl's dad. Well, they're he's not their real dad, but they grow up with him as their dad. And I remember thinking, this is for teenagers. I don't know if you know what book I'm talking about, but they seem to really like to write about what's fantastical, I guess.
Well, it's really interesting because like when I was doing research for my series, if you look at different legends and mythology across the world, there's certain creatures that keep popping up, and they might have different abilities or different backgrounds or whatever, but there's enough similarities that you can recognize them, like fairies in Celtic myth versus elves in Germanic myth versus was it Tenon, I think, in Southeast Asia, which are kind of a cross between angels and fairies. I mean, it's phenomenal how just widespread these ideas are. And it's kind of fun to explore those and see, how you can bring them to life nowadays. And I think that's what a lot of new authors are going for, and especially with young adult books, because you've got younger people, their minds are a little bit more open and more accepting of that, maybe.
Yeah. And maybe want something more interesting, and reading's escapism, right? So
Exactly.
instead of reading everyday life, let's go off into a far away land. So well, I want to thank you guys for this. Was a really interesting discussion, and I took lots of notes, so I know where to start. I actually, like I said, I do read occasionally paranormal, but it's just sort of incidental to the book I pick up. So maybe now, except for the Black Dagger series, I I do pick those up. In fact, I have two that I think are like not in the regular series, but part of that world.
The Legacy, the one with the school that they have.
No, I haven't read the ones with the kids.
I love those.
There's one new one that's about the prison.
Oh yeah, I decided not to read that so I don't get sucked into that series.
Okay. And then there was one I read recently that I thought was terrible. And then the other one, I'm not quite sure what it is.
Yeah, have you read her contemporary romance?
I haven't read any of like the Bourbon King.
Yeah, I did enjoy that series.
Doesn't she have one about angels? I haven't read that one either.
I know which one you're talking about. I haven't read that, but no, the angel is part of that's the angel share. That is part of the Bourbon series.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I believe, if that's the one that you're talking about. But I will say that I did enjoy that series.
Okay, well, now I'm gonna have to try that one too. So anyways, thank you guys so much. This was so fun. I really hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. It was a reminder to me how much I miss going to book festivals and writer conferences. I told them before we started the conversation that really what I wanted to do was to pretend like we had just met at a conference and we're sitting and having coffee or a cocktail and just talking about books. And I feel like we pulled that off, and I hope that you enjoyed that and maybe learned some things and discovered some authors and some books that maybe you're going to want to check out. I know I'm going to. So that's it for this week's show. Just a real quick reminder, head over to swoonworthyhea.com. That's where you can find information about this podcast. And of course, on this episode, I'm going to have links to Chloe and Sionna's information so you can check out their websites and their books, as well as the list of books that they mentioned on the show in case any of those sound interesting to you. Plus, of course, there's a whole lot of other fun things going on there. And if there isn't something over there that you find fun, start your own group, create your own fun. It's all about having a community of people who love romance, one place to go just to enjoy it all. So please check it out. Another reminder, if you are a writer or a wannabe writer or just want to see if you can be a writer, please sign up for the Write with Heart challenge. It's how to write a romance in 30 days. It's at writewithheart.com. And again, that link will also be over at swoonworthyhea.com. I'm really excited about this challenge. But you're going to want to go right away so that you can get your planner and get ready so that you can start writing on November 1st. So that's it for this show. Once again, this is Jenna Hart from swoonworthyhea.com wishing you peace, love, and happily ever after.